Okay, well, I hope everyone has been enjoying the event so far. This is our first Q&A panel, but our second panel of the event today. And I hope all of the presentations have been flowing smoothly, which it looks like they have for everybody. One thing I will point out, if you would like to be in touch with anyone here at Software Oasis or any of the panelists or speakers that you've heard so far in the event, that big orange button will get you connected up at the top of the site. But I'd like to start by introducing everyone that's on our panel. We have Chris Keevill, who is the Chief Executive Officer over at Versos AI. Tarek Kabrit, co-founder of Seez. Welcome, Tarek. Scott Estill, who is the Managing Partner over at Lancor. And Faye Ellis, Principal Training Architect over at Pluralsight. So welcome to everybody that's on the panel. We have had just a ton of questions come in, so I want to do our best to answer as many of the questions as we can for the audience. And I'll just start right at the top. Chris, we had quite a few questions come in for you. So let me start with the first question. Which is from Megan, who is joining us today from Atlanta, Georgia, right outside of the city there. And she's asking, when a major studio wants to turn its video archives into training data, what are the first metadata and chain of custody benchmarks you set so the resulting corpus is genuinely high integrity for world models?
Okay, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Megan. That's a pretty fulsome question, and I'll try to be brief because we could spend, I think, each of us quite a bit of time on that. So the evaluation of a library, whether it's from a major studio or any library holder, comes down to quality of the content and fit for that content into the training ecosystem. Accessibility. So where is this video? Where are these video archives stored? Ideally, they're in accessible AWS S3 containers, not sitting on cold hard drives in cold storage. And three, and I'll spend a little more time on this because I think that's the focus of your question, is establishing the provenance of the assets. So the provenance of the asset is really critical for a lot of reasons. The model trainers themselves want to ensure that these assets are rights cleared and they're being licensed by the rights owner. So that's critical. It's going to become increasingly critical as time goes on, as the users of the models themselves are going to want assurances that those models were ethically trained, meaning they were trained on rights cleared assets. That's not easy to do, and a lot of it today is based on trust. So it relies on the trust of the provider, we'll say the supplier or the library, to declare their ownership and provide indemnification through the supply chain. What we then do is we apply a C2PA manifest, think of it as a certificate of ownership, that establishes, at least at the point of entry into our platform, where the assets came from, who owns them, and then further, we would apply what they refer to as new ingredients to the manifest, which you can think of as destinations. So where does that asset go in the supply chain next from us? Into a distributor, into a broker's library, into a training model, or what have you. And all of that provenance data is captured in the asset metadata and also in any derivative of that asset. So if the asset is, we'll say, a 1 hour episodic program, but it is segmented into scenes and then clipped, then the clips themselves get their own provenance, their own C2PA manifest. So that's a bit of a high level question, a high level answer to a pretty deep question.
Yeah, it was a pretty deep question. And Faye, the next question came in for you. And this question comes to us from Jasmine, who is just outside of Austin, Texas. And Jasmine is asking, when you help an enterprise move from AI curiosity to real capability, what is the most effective way to measure whether their upskilling strategy is actually closing skills gaps instead of just generating course completions?
We may have lost her. I'm looking at.
Oh, let's see here. Let me. Faye, I'm going to add you back to the stage. I think we may have dropped out there. Did you
Hello,
get that whole
sorry.
question? No,
No,
no worries.
I just
Yeah,
heard that it was a question for me. Would you mind repeating it,
yeah,
please?
no worries. So let me run that by you again. So this is from Jasmine, who's in Austin, Texas, and Jasmine is asking, when you help an enterprise move from AI curiosity to real capability, what is the most effective way to measure whether their upskilling strategy is actually closing skills gaps instead of just generating course completions?
Well, that's a really good question, actually. One of the ways that we measure with our customers is using skill assessments. And we've devised these skill assessments that actually establish where your skills are. So what do you actually know about a certain topic? How much do you know about implementing RAG or using AI for proficiency, that kind of thing? So you get quizzed on all these different areas that you should know. And that helps to demonstrate that you've actually learned something. And with one of our solutions, our AI Academy solution, that's exactly how we do it. So we start off right at the beginning of the process with a skill assessment, establishing exactly where your skills lie, where the gaps are. And then we put you through this learning and upskilling program. And throughout that time, the idea is that people in different roles, in different departments, gain the skills that they need, like role-related skills they actually need to learn in order to deliver on their roles. And then at the end of the process, we help you to do another assessment. So you can really see the impact of the skills there. But there's loads of different ways that our customers measure success for this kind of thing, in things like anecdotal measurements around feeling more confident in your work, more proficient in certain skills, fewer mistakes, finding it easier to troubleshoot errors and bugs, ability to mentor others, project delivery timescales being shrunk down, and that kind of thing. So loads of different ways that we help our customers to measure success, because it's not all about watching videos and doing endless training courses. You want to actually get results, and a lot of us don't have lots of time as well. So we want to make sure that our upskilling efforts are really targeted and we're getting measurable results for them. So thanks for that question. Really good question.
Fantastic. And Scott, this next question came in for you. Actually came in a few different ways from a few different members of the audience. So I'm just going to pick one. This question I'm reading here is from Lauren, who's in Denver, Colorado, right here in the US, bright and early there. In a world where leverage and multiple arbitrage are crowded trades, how do you advise PE-backed CEOs to quantify the impact of operational improvement so it is visible in the deal model, not treated as soft upside?
Yeah, well, I think the whole reason what we do is I spent, unfortunately, a lot of misspent youth, or so to speak, 17 years as a banker, sadly, unfortunately. What people try to do is find all the answers in Excel. And so whether that's multiple arbitrage, whether it's purchase price multiples, where you're thinking about what the value is, and if you do the regression on why one company is so much more successful than the other, it's always about the management team and their ability to pivot and transition during an ownership period to generate differentiated alpha, as opposed to just financially engineer your way to return. So, Chris's point and Faye's point about how do you be thoughtful about getting results? It's the same argument with an executive in a PE-backed business. Either before you actually pick your PE partner and choose which one you want to work with, or once you're in the seat, how do you drive alpha? The problem is most of the people in PE firms and venture capital shops are finance nerds like me, and they're not operators like the folks on this call. So what you really need to do is assess, what are you trying to do? Not all revenue dollars are created equal. And so how do you be thoughtful from a CEO's perspective to create value? It's asking better questions. And I'd argue the sooner you ask those questions, the better. Not all revenue dollars are created equal. We care more about margin. We care more about EBITDA or cash flow. And so how do you think through using experts that have gotten the training they need, that understand how to be thoughtful about digital media, the skills assessment? How do you do that earlier, before you own an asset and before you commit to your private equity partner? So that's our business model, right? We do 120 searches a year, find me a CEO, CFO of a business, but we close 10 deals where we introduce executive A to PE firm B with idea C, and then co-invest. So if we're delusional with ourselves, we're changing the world of M&A. It's a bit of a large goal, but it's always about operators, and I'll take an operator's insight over financial engineering all day long.
I love it. Tarek, this next question comes to you from Brandon, who's just outside of Dallas, Texas, here in the US. And Brandon is asking, when dealers move from gimmicky chatbots to deeply integrated AI agents, what KPIs do you recommend they track in the first 90 days to prove this is a revenue and experience play and not just a cost savings experiment?
Yeah, great question. So what most dealers currently have, like Brandon rightfully said, is they were playing around with some gimmicky AI chatbots, and now with the second phase of the AI integration into the dealerships, they're beginning to look at more integrated solutions within their wider systems. And the key metric to measure at that point, when you're looking at AI chatbots, you typically look at engagement, how many chats you've had. If it's a slightly deeper AI chatbot, you might even look at how many leads were generated or how many test drives were booked. As you start moving into more deeper and deeper integrations into the dealer software, you start looking at actual operational improvements for that dealership. So reduction in time is one key one, basically. How much time did it take to carry out a certain job, and now how much time does it take? A lot of dealers are looking to automate what they call non-revenue generating activities. So you would look at those activities where, for example, a salesperson spends around 70% of their time logging in data into CRM systems, sending out emails, and not really sitting down and selling with the customer, right? So you start looking, okay, how much of that 70%, how many hours per day is that, and how many of those hours can be automated using AI in an intelligent way that really, reduces time and cost for the dealer, but also handles a lot of the, execution work on the back end for those dealerships. And the key within that is really two things. One is getting the right integrations in place, plus process mapping and workflow, adjustments, and then adoption by the employees. So really making sure they actually use those capabilities and allow them to help them the way they can. They say AI can do a lot of things for you, and the winners in this new future are the ones that will let it do all that work for them.
Fantastic. And I love this next question because it really touches on something that a lot of individuals at the event today that are, global in nature are dealing with. So this next question is for Chris, and this comes to us from Lucas, who's in Munich, Germany. And Lucas is asking, with European regulators tightening rules on AI training data, how do you design your rights clearing processes so that models trained on these data sets remain defensible under future provenance requirements?
Thanks, Lucas. Guten Tag in Munich. The European Union is leading the way in the regulatory aspect of rights ownership on data training. They are signaling, if not going further in restrictions around the use of models that are not ethically trained. So there's no question that the bar is rising on requirements around ethically trained source data. What we have in mind, and this is not built, but we're preparing an industry white paper on this topic, the very topic that you're referring to. And we envision an open source C2PA registry, not owned or managed by us necessarily, but a place where source data owners, so library owners, asset owners, can register their C2PA manifests, where supply chain providers like Versos or data brokers can do the same, and where the models themselves can reference the source data manifests in an open way, all the way through to model users. So you can imagine in Europe, a large enterprise looking to incorporate a model, they would be able to then look up the provenance records in an open source registry. Now, for us to do it is one thing, but it really does need some industry-wide cooperation and collaboration in that sense, so that others, most, or hopefully all in the supply chain were registering their assets in that open source registry.
Makes a lot of sense. And Faye, this next question, I see we have quite a few individuals joining us from Canada. So I want to grab a question from somebody there. I see one, Faye, from Oliver, who's in Toronto in Canada. And when you talk about trust as a pillar of AI success, how do you practically embed ethics, transparency, and risk controls into day-to-day engineering workflows so they don't feel like a separate compliance track?
Yeah, really important. You know what? I think that when we talk about ethics, AI ethics and responsible AI, I think it's really similar to security. If you think about how attitudes towards security have changed over the years, you know, decades ago, security was a barrier. The people from security or compliance, you know, stopping us doing the things we wanted to, or making it difficult to integrate systems together. To now, I think, even like general public has a better appreciation for security because it impacts all of us. It impacts all of us on every single, you know, connected device that we use. So I think that ethical AI, responsible AI is going to become similar to security in that it's everybody's responsibility. Everybody will be understanding the impact of not doing things responsibly, because it will mean that bad decisions come out of systems, harmful decisions come out of systems, you know, applications and systems behaving in ways that we never envisaged before. And as well as, you know, think about cyber attacks as well, and new threats coming from AI, prompt injection attacks, that kind of thing. So I think that there is going to be this real tipping point for responsible AI, and it's actually the organizations that go over and above compliance, that build in their own standards for responsible AI, ethical AI. You know, we were talking earlier about transparency and explainability, provenance of the data that goes into those models. I think it's the organizations that go over and above and that establish their own standards who really will be the successful ones. And I think it really is about fostering that consciousness and that, you know, cultural awareness within the organization of how important it is to ensure, you know, responsible AI use, in the same way as it's important for us to protect our bank accounts with proper passwords and everything, you know, not share passwords, with that, all of that is second nature to us now, and I think it will become second nature for people to protect their data when it comes to AI as well.
You're muted, Michael.
This next question comes to us for Scott, and this is from Marcus, who is in New York City. And Marcus is asking, when you coach operators entering private equity, what is the first value creation lever you ask them to focus on so they prove they can think like owners, not just great executors?
Well, Marcus, go Knicks. Nice win last night. So the key to this is the unfortunate answer is it depends. The more nuanced and helpful answer is early. So the problem with like 10 number one priorities is there's 10 number one priorities. And so you can't have that many. You got to focus on what you can do. And so the argument will be you could go left, right, up, or down during your ownership period, but that IRR clock, the internal rate of return clock, starts ticking the second a private equity firm, invests their capital. So let's be clear about what we think. If you're a good executor, great. Who doesn't want a good executor? The problem is you just took a hill super efficiently. Good for you. You get on the hill and you're like, oh, I'm on the wrong hill. So the question will be, where do you want to go with all those priorities? Pick the one or two that are most appropriate, and then be asking the private equity firm, this is not your first investment, most likely. So I think of the 10, these are the 2 to 3 things we should focus on. What do you think? Is there alignment? Fine, let's hope there is. If there isn't, let's figure that out. And even if there is, then it becomes, you've had 10, 20, 50 other portfolio companies that have seen these problems. What did you do? Where did you stub your toe? Where did the team mess up? Where did they do well? Let's all do that day -30, day -50 before. It used to be you could have the 100-day plan. You'd get going, you'd pick your PE firm because they paid the last eighth of a turn of EBITDA, and great, I'm going to have an amazing PE partner. They're not all created equal. Some will, want to be in the weeds with you. Some want to leave you alone. Some, so how do you be clear about what that plan is going forward? And if it's not the right plan, you should walk, not run, maybe a run and not sprint away from the situation. So you got to go early and be clear about what the game plan is and what you think that value could be, but then hear what they've done that's similar, because it's got to be a collaborative effort. You shouldn't be on an island. The CEO job is lonely. You're the CEO. So you need to be thoughtful about how independent board members or the PE shop or the board generally can help you accomplish the goals. But early in collaboration is the right way to make sure you're doing it efficiently.
Tarek, this next question is for you, and it comes to us from Lucas, who's in Copenhagen in Denmark. And Lucas is asking, for European dealerships facing stricter privacy rules, how do you design your AI agents and data flows so they remain compliant while still giving shoppers highly personalized conversational recommendations?
Yeah, so in Europe, it's a bit tougher field over there, like he rightfully mentioned. So in Europe, most dealers expect you to be GDPR compliant. A lot of them expect you to be, SOC 1, SOC 2 compliant as well, which we have to do. But from there onwards, it's when the clients or the customers land on the dealer's website, you can ask them like at the beginning of the chat, so you can be upfront about it and say, are you happy with this, or there's a box they need to tick or whatever. So using some creative user UI, you can really get their permission to extract that data, and you give them something in return. The key is to always make sure you're giving something back. So it's would you like us to, are you okay with us getting your name, number, email in exchange next time you land on this chat, for example? We would remember what you looked at last time and recommend relevant cars for you based on your previous search history. You don't have to redo it again. So finding the right balance between giving something back in exchange of that data and then giving them the option or the choice to opt out if and when they need to do that. I think that balance is how to do it. We have a bunch of dealers in Denmark. We actually have with a few of the big guys in Denmark, and we try to find that balance between those two.
Yeah, and very interesting, because in practical use, and I think this is something that so many organizations at the event today are coming to realize, that first party data is so important, especially as third-party data is becoming more and more restricted as time goes on. So really great insight there. This next question comes to us, and this is for Chris, comes to us from Portland, Oregon, from Brianna. And Brianna is asking, for enterprises sitting on decades of under-indexed video, what does a realistic phased approach look like to go from simply file names only to the level of structured, scene and object level metadata you described in your presentation?
Decades of data, depending on the size of the studio, could be, could vary widely in terms of volume. The first stage, though, that's important is to catalog to the best extent that you're able to what you have in your archive. So categorize it by content type or genre. Broad categories would be understood by most studio people. Is it scripted, unscripted? Is it raw camera data, or is it post-production data in some digital format, 1080p, MP4 style data? Because if the files are too heavy, then they're going to be very difficult to migrate into an indexing platform. So you'll want to first identify the highest marketable content. We'll say scripted and unscripted, high production quality footage in MP4 data. So start there. I would look for a few thousand hours of available content to capture the attention of a broker or a buyer. So let's say you've got 10,000 hours, to the best of your ability to estimate, in your archive. Find the 20% that is highest quality and most marketable, and then work with a partner to index and enrich those video files, enrich the data through, a platform like Versos. This is what we do, and then bring that content to market, probably through a broker, because the buyers themselves, the AI labs, don't want to deal with individual studios. They want to deal with aggregators and brokers. So find a good partner broker that wants to help you bring that content to market, and off you go. Start with that small sample set. I say small. 2,000 hours is a bit of a heavy lift for most people to pull out of their cold storage and get to the cloud.
Yeah, I love it. And it is so important structuring your data and having that right foundational layer to be able to achieve indexing within AI search, which is really the direction everything is heading. And especially as so many of the AI agents are surfing the internet, that is becoming a more and more important. You're right in the crosshairs of where everything is heading. So that makes a lot of sense. This next question comes to us for Faye, and this is from Daniel in Chicago, Illinois. And Daniel is asking, in organizations where roles are evolving faster than job descriptions, how do you recommend leaders map AI skills to specific roles without freezing innovation or over-engineering competency models?
Oh, that's a tough question. One way that our customers do it is by creating learning channels. And what you can do on our platform is you can actually, similar to your like watch list or playlist of things you want to watch on Netflix, you can build out particular channels for yourself. So build out your own sort of program of learning for things that are actually important to you today, but also going to be important to you as you grow into your career. So I think really having that ability to identify, okay, what are the things I need to know right now, and for the role I want to move into, like next year or the year afterwards, where do those kind of skills gaps exist, and trying to anticipate and understand where those gaps really are. But I think that at the moment it can be extremely overwhelming for all of us in the tech industry, just trying to keep up with everything, because sometimes I feel like I learn one thing, I can spend 3 months learning something and getting like really good at it, only for it to be superseded by the next big thing. But actually, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because what I find is happening in the tech industry at the moment is that you might learn how to, for instance, create an agent or build out a RAG pipeline, and you might learn how to do it the hard way. But then, months down the line, different cloud providers are bringing out ways to simplify those processes and abstract away some of the difficulty in actually getting started and hand cranking and DIYing some of these different techniques. So, yeah, I wouldn't feel overwhelmed, really. There isn't anything that we can do about it. But I would say, yeah, building up that kind of program of like a selected, curated set of learnings or activities to do to help you like bridge those gaps, fill those gaps, but also revisiting as well, because I think this is an evolving space, right? As all of our roles start to change, we move away from being necessarily doers or coders or builders to moving much more into more architectural roles, management type roles, where we're kind of making decisions about strategy and making decisions about approaches and ways of doing things, rather than doing all of the different activities ourselves. So I think, yeah, just having that flexibility to kind of revisit programs of learning so that you can make sure that you're still on track as everything evolves. I hope that answers the question. It was a bit rambling.
Yeah, Faye, I think that was a great answer to a really deep question, and we definitely have some smart cookies on this event today. What I wanted to, and Daniel, I'll throw this out to you. We had on our most recent episode of Career Spotlight Vika Saditya, who's the CEO over at Hacker Earth, and he really dives deep on that question. So you may want to check out that new episode. I'm going to put the final question to Scott, and this is from Tyler, who's just outside of Miami in Florida. And Tyler is asking, you talked about tracking 14 to 15,000 companies coming to market. How should an operator practically narrow that universe to a short list that matches their strengths without getting overwhelmed or scattered?
Yeah, I mean, it's too big of a number, for sure. But I think what we do is you say, all right, if there's 15,000 companies that we track that are coming to market, let's cut that by industry and size and scale and scope and geography. And once you do that, you cut it down to a much more meaningful number, right? And then when it's tight, you're saying, all right, by the way, that exercise, listen, you can use AI and technology. It used to be, it was a technology question. Now, if you're bending yellow metal, it doesn't matter. Every business is using AI and technology and agents. And it's like, if you're old, like me, sadly, you were in the internet group as a banker. Like everyone's got the internet, like in like a year or two, right? Same thing here. AI, we do a lot of AI operating partner work, a lot of AI tech partners, different things with the PE. So it's everywhere. So my point is, if you can cut it down by industry and size and scale and scope, then you've got a manageable number of maybe 100 companies, 200 companies that you're looking at. Why did these, and you pick one or two or three, why did those one or two or three bubble up versus the 98 or whatever that didn't? Well, they exhibit these characteristics. They avoid this headwind, take advantage of this tailwind. Here's the systemic risk. Fine. So now once you do that exercise, what often happens is an operator says, oh man, that reminds me of this company. It's not in your list. I know I don't have the whole world mapped. My circular references would be a problem for my modeling, right? So how do you tease out where you want to spend your time? I'd argue the problem with search is it benefits the company. Let me come work. Hey, PE firm, thank you for letting me work. It's your benevolence. The real juice is the other way around. The operator's got the insight how to create alpha. So you should choose which PE firm you work with. And by having actual assets that are coming to market that you think, you have to do your diligence, have the bones of being super compelling, now you're choosing which PE to work with, which sponsor, with venture capital firm, whatever, right? So that's why we use that model of all these companies, is how do you sort of force, as opposed to saying, oh, I can do lots of things. Yeah, I know you can, operator. What do you want to do? What do you, upon, sort of reflection, oh my gosh, these three companies, these are awesome. If I could run that thing or be in the board of that thing or co-invest on that thing, that would be awesome. Okay, why? And so that dialogue then translated to a PE firm generates that alpha. Because the PE firm knows they're good at numbers. They can make anything look accretive in the first year. Like, that's easy. We can all do that. The question is, why does this asset that we've picked from this larger group seem super compelling? And by the way, if the PE firm doesn't agree with you, fine, but then don't work with them, right? Because you're going to be stuck with this PE firm for the next 3 to 4 years, or pick your number. So you want them to not be a bunch of sycophants, but you want someone to say, hey, I agree that this is the right direction that we could go in. Have you thought about this? What about that? And now all of a sudden you're having this collaborative discussion like we talked about, day negative, whatever, 40 before you own it. Not just, hey, you should take this job. It'll be amazing. You have to move to, I don't know, Memphis or some lovely part of the world where you don't live. Okay, but maybe not, right? Let's be thoughtful about the opportunity to create alpha first, and then find the right partner to help you grow.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't get to this question, Tarek, in 1 minute or less. Let's see if we can answer this. This is from Emily, who's in Phoenix, Arizona. And Emily is asking, you mentioned that 64% of dealer traffic happens after hours. What did early adopters change in their sales process and staffing once they could reliably engage and qualify those off-hours shoppers with AI?
So historically, they just, a lot of dealers just didn't attend to those people coming, after 5 p.m. and on the weekend. So it's not that they had to, readjust their internal structure from an org chart or anything like that. But once they added AI, suddenly, people landing on the website at midnight had someone to talk to. And the result of that is really generating more leads and qualified leads and test drives for dealers during, operating hours and non-operating hours in the evenings, which were dead hours for most dealers that didn't have, active chat solutions.
Fantastic. And
Less than a minute.
Tarek, there you did it. Tarek, Chris, Faye, Scott, thank you so much for joining us on this second live Q&A panel of the event, and very much appreciate everyone's time today.
All right,
Thanks
thank you.